All right, welcome everybody. Let's get the last few people to have a seat here and we'll get started. All right. Well, first off, thank you all for coming today. My name is Bebek. I'm the CEO and founder of Coppernico Metals. This story started 9 years ago when we first went to Peru. I was introduced to Peru because after a few really good successful exits for shareholders, wanted to go find something much bigger, find something that would make a top 10 global impact as a discovery in the world. Met a gentleman that was part of the discovery of Yanacocha as a 61 million ounce gold discovery in Peru. It's an operating mine by Newmont, who led us to the Sombrero Project. 9 years later, there's been a lot of challenges to get here. COVID was in the between of that. We're finally drilling one of the most compelling large-scale copper projects that I'm aware of in the business right now. And we're seeing the early indications that our thesis that this could be a top 10 mine in the world could be true. Today I'm going to be giving an overview. For those of you watching live or watching this video presentation later and have more questions, please feel free to email us. In the room today, just if you don't mind waiting till the end of my presentation for your questions, and I'll address any questions people have. As I'm going to talk about what we might be doing in exploration, I'm most certainly making forward-looking statements, and all of them are going to be optimistic and positive because I'm a positive person and I like the direction that everything's heading. This is the track record, and to measure off things we've done before, these are snapshots in time of a discovery of 5 million ounces in a bull market on the left. That share price performance, 49 cents to $9 per share, was what gave us the first kind of fortunate event. The skill set that I learned from that was how to monetize exploration success. Besides raising capital, attracting great people, that's one of the special weapons or superpowers we have as a group. Went to do it again in Caden, and I didn't realize how tough these things were to do consecutively, or getting one was that lucky, but we were very fortunate to drill 100 holes in Mexico and sell the company to Agnico Eagle. If you held shares of Caden on the right, which is a bear market success, a year later they traded at $7 per share. So these are the kind of returns we're looking for. In the case of Sombrero, the main asset in Coppernico, we're looking for something much bigger. To give you context, Keegan was a 5 million ounce gold discovery. The analog to what we're looking for in terms of gold versus copper, Sombrero is a 40 million ounce gold discovery in copper at a time when copper is about to go into serious supply shortages as we move into electrification. The story here is an analog, and I prefer analogs over brand new things. It lowers the risk, and our analog happens to be the 11th largest copper producer in the world, Las Bambas. Today I'm going to be showing you a lot of similar features, a lot of indications that we're on the way of finding something very similar and potentially as big or potentially bigger than the Las Bambas mine itself. Once we got social access, everything picked up. The catalysts were quite rich with the company, everywhere from various senior executives from BHP joining our board. The head of exploration from BHP, who had followed Sombrero for 5 years, he retired from BHP. I asked him if he'd like to be part of it on the director side. He not only came on as a director, he invested into the company, and he brought a colleague of his who was formerly building mines with BHP. She now does it for Anglo to our board level. So we've enhanced our board level, we've enhanced our technical team. We were able to raise $19.4 million earlier this year, in May of this year. We did that at 50 cents per share Canadian, and we welcomed Teck Resources as a 9.9 investor. Newmont owns 6.5% of the company as well, and so we have the audience in our shareholder registry, but several other majors were trying to buy in at that time. Teck beat them out in the bidding process. There are no hooks. They're a very, very accretive shareholder for us. And now the most exciting part, we're drilling. In terms of our management team, the biggest strengths here, besides our experience and our abilities, is our culture. In the success of Keegan or Caden, we had incredible culture amongst our team. Everyone works here at about 150% of the expected time you'd expect them to work. They work around the clock for the same paycheck, and that's the true spirit of a good management team in exploration. Tim Kingsley is our VP of Exploration. He's new to our group of the last couple of years, but I've grown very fond of him because he's very calm. And exploration is very emotional, and when you're on a project with so many large targets, it's easy to get distracted by the excitement, but he keeps it very calm, he's very prudent, and he's worked and lived in Peru previously, and he speaks fluent Spanish. He lives locally in Bellingham in Washington. Christian Rios is our corporate development, SVP of corporate development. He's the one who unlocked our social access. He's Peruvian, he lives in Lima. He's been remarkable in terms of getting us through permitting with the government, but also establishing an incredible social access with these communities. And lastly, but critical, is our CFO, Stacy, who had worked with us since 2015 in Orin. Her experience in Peru is paramount to watching the bleed of your capital and staying very disciplined with your spending. So the team works incredibly well together. The collaboration with the board is very engaged. It's a very, very strong team, both at the exploration level and management level and the board level. Our team is managed by Tim Kingsley as the VP of Exploration, but he gets the lever on advice and information from Keenan Jennings, who is the head of exploration for BHP for 5 years. Before that, he worked on Oyu Tolgoi with Rio Tinto, and he actually had mapped Las Bambas in the early days before Las Bambas became a big discovery 25 years ago. Antonio Ribas is also on our board. He's the former VP of Geosciences for BHP. That's quality control of exploration. This is a project that is way above the typical junior to have, and these are the people that bring our ability to punch way above our belt at a very efficient capital cost, because some of the most senior people are on the board level, and that gives us access to very smart minds, but also strategic thinking, having people come from the largest mining company in the world, trying to establish how you want to monetize or drill your project, at what pace, or having somebody who builds major mines to tell us what long lead items we should do early so we can maximize the monetization of anything we find. This chart here is showing you some of the largest copper mines in the world. You can see that Las Bambas sits at number 11. As a reminder, it sold for $7 billion in 2013. That was $5.8 billion for the metal value and about $1.5 billion for sunk capital to build it. That is our goal here. That's what we're going for, and our current market cap is around $50 million Canadian. A lot of success will have to come out of the drill bit, but we certainly have the targets and the pipeline of targets to achieve something that could be that good if we're successful. So the story, this is where it gets exciting. On the right and the left, on the right in the brown area of this slide, you're looking at several major mines, not just Las Bambas, Constancia, Tintaya, Antucoppay, some well-known mines in southeastern Peru. These mines are either producing or going into production, and now Las Bambas is operating without issue after a few stumbles they had coming online, but you can produce in this part of Peru without issue. The brown area is indicating ground that's not covered by volcanics, and on the left, the ground is covered by a layer of volcanic ash, which basically looks like grass. And this is where Miguel Cardozo, who was part of the Yanacocha discovery, first saw erosional windows and figured that the belt didn't go north-south, the trend actually just wider continues to the west. So what we're trying to do is not just replicate the Las Bambas discovery, we're trying to replicate a mining trend with our 100,000 hectare land position that we have over on the left-hand side of this image in the volcanic cover. This is the first thing we saw when we got there. We saw really good grades of gold and copper. We saw skarn mineralization, which makes up the bulk of those deposits on the right-hand side of the trend. But most importantly, in the lower right, you see the Ferrobamba limestone, and you see a mineralized Eocene intrusion. If you think of an intrusion, think of an underground volcano, metals intruding to the surface, and when it hits that limestone, there's a chemical reaction and a crust forms. That crust is called a skarn. That's what carries the really robust grades. And in our case, you'll see in a moment, we have about 10 kilometers of skarn mineralization to go test, which is very, very, very large in terms of our first projects. 20 years ago, a company by the name of Aceros Arequipa came in here looking for iron. They did some bulk sampling. They came back in 2013 and they drilled 8 holes. All of those holes hit copper mineralization. All of those hit around 0.5% to 0.6% copper. They gave the first indication that this could be a major copper find. It's the third dimension in the moment. Why did the steel company not pursue the copper? Because they're after iron. This company makes about $1 billion net profit a year. They're very focused on steel, not copper. And when you see copper with iron formations or with iron that you're trying to extract, it ruins the extraction. So it was no longer of key interest to them. We got on here in 2015. We almost got our first social access and drill permits in 2020. We spent about $4 million doing numerous surveys, taking numerous samples over the years, and then we hit the COVID break for 2020 to 2023. And then finally we were able to gain social access last November and get a drill permit in April. So a big change in Peru happened politically with Castillo being impeached. Dina Bilarti is the current president of the country, and she's been remarkable. They've cut the permitting timelines down by half almost. It's the best I've seen it politically since 2015, and the biggest improvement has been on the actual getting of permits and working with the communities, as we're demonstrating with the things that we've been able to achieve. On the left, you're looking from the sky down at an 18 by 6 kilometer footprint. This is about 6% of our entire land position. That's all prospective. What we're showing you on the right is a layer cake from top to bottom, like a layer of the earth. And we're showing you in pink the intrusion that I mentioned. When it hits the blue units, the blue rocks, the Ferrobamba, the Grand Medal, that's where the purple skarn is forming. We also see skarn forming in the sediments, but the purple crust is what we're targeting. And if you look at the far right, you can see all of the mines I showed you on the right-hand side of the belt. They're all occurring in the exact same rocks that we're exploring in. So not only is this dating back to the same time that these mines were formed, it's also the exact same rocks, the same style of geology that occurred there. Comparing ourselves to Las Bambas is a very, very big arm wave, and it's early to do that. This slide is very helpful to give you some context. On the right-hand side of the slide here, you have 3 clusters in purple. Those are the skarn porphyry bodies that make up the 1.6 billion ton of 0.6% copper of Las Bambas. That's about $80 billion worth of copper at $4 copper today, and about a 100-year mine life that exists on the right. On our side, you can see a lot of green. There's a lot of volcanic cover, and that's partly what masked this opportunity from other people coming to it prior to us, as well as our patience to get through the social axis, which took some time. But we've traced our skarn intrusions to the same scale as Las Bambas is next door, and you can see that in this part of our property, they're both mineralized on both sides, and they match in scale, which gets us extremely encouraged that we could be finding something of that magnitude. Because we have all that volcanic cover, we need to see what's beneath the surface. So we use electrical currents on the left to see what's conductive. Copper and gold are very conductive. And then we use magnetic currents on the right. If you put these, overlap them together, you have a combination of magnetic and conductive signatures. The magnetic side is where a lot of the rich grade comes from, and the conductive side is where the volume comes from. So we have a combination of both. There's about 10 kilometers or so of areas that we can drill, of overlapping targets that not only have copper and gold on surface, but they're also indicating that subsurface this could occur as well. In the area right by Corrales here to the right, there's hole number 4. We announced this. I'll talk about this in a moment. We drilled on the edge of one of these big signatures. The whole hole had copper in it, but 20 meters ran 0.5%. That is very significant because you can drill underneath it. Skarns are variable, and you can get the width and continuation, but it would fit in the Las Bambas highlight slide. And we have numerous very large targets yet to drill. This slide is showing you the age, and what we have here in green is the age dates we took. Why is the age important? Because all those mines on the right-hand side of the trend were formed about 38 to 40 million years ago. 2 majors took the bulk of these samples. There's about 20 of them, and they've measured the age of all these different intrusions coming up. This area just kept producing multiple events that brought mineralization in them, and they're all the same era as all the mines next door. So this is a very, very important aspect of the actual comparison and analog to all of the mines next door. When you get to the exciting part and you start to talk about what kind of a mine could exist, there are some holes that have been drilled here on the Furaso area. On the right-hand side, I'll talk about those in a minute, but there's some great trenches. 230 meters of about 0.5% copper on surface, 109 meters on the western side, about 0.67% copper with 30 meters running almost 2%. Those are incredible grades and widths. Those do meet mining grades and widths, and that's on surface with incredible infrastructure, which I'll show in a minute. But this gave us the confidence that there's widespread mineralization on surface. And then we looked at some of the drilling that occurred by that 200-meter trench. Again, this drilling was not targeting copper. It was targeting iron. We saw 90 meters of about 0.5% copper, 116 meters of 0.42 copper, 0.24 gold, averages about 0.6% copper gold. All of the holes hit what we believe to be potentially economic mineralization with some great grades. The 2 pieces of core we're showing you on this slide are also very important. The greener core is oxide mineralization. That's really good. It can be enriched on surface, but the blacker core is in the sulfides, the roots of the system. So not only is the copper impressive near surface, but the fact that it could be local is supported by the fact that we see it in the fresh rock, which is in the sulfides in that black image over there. So an incredible area This is the most obvious target on our property. We would love to have started here. We think this is a deposit that's going to grow very quickly, and it could grow very obviously, but we do not have permits yet for this area. We'll have those in the second quarter of next year. So what we're doing is we're going around a 7-kilometer horseshoe shape to go and see if we can find other prospective areas that are slightly buried under cover and find out where the most robust areas are first before we spend the expensive money to bring in more drills and drill a lot more. This slide is a bit busier, but I'm going to try to take you into a very simple model. In the middle, you have purple and pink rocks, which is indicating the intrusions coming up with the mineralization. And on the blue, which you can see a bit of it on the bottom of the right of the image, you can see a bit of that limestone. We believe the limestone circles this whole intrusion, and as I said before, the crust or the skarn mineralization will occur right where the intrusion hits the limestone. You can see a lot of grade on surface. In areas, there's grade seeping through, leaking through the limestone. We have very big targets that are 30 to 50 meters below that, which we're testing. There are massive targets in this project. There are targets that could range as far as 500 meters plus thick and 1 to 3 kilometers in length. So very, very substantial scale and very impressive grade throughout this entire project. This is the horseshoe shape I'm talking about. The dots you're looking at are the drill holes. You can see where hole 4 is. We're making our way all the way left. We're starting on the Corrales North and going up towards Chumpi. The Chumpi target's about 2.7 kilometers long. We drilled the first hole on the lower left corner of this image. We're drilling it right now. We're seeing copper in all the holes we drill. We don't know the grades until we get the results back, but we're seeing copper on both sides of this skarn, of this intrusion, and we're starting to vector very, very quickly towards some of the sweet spots of the system. So the pace of exploration is going extremely well, the confidence is building, and there's copper throughout the system. This is hole 4. This is the drill hole that had copper throughout the hole. You can see the section which runs 20 meters of about 0.5% copper. Drilling behind that and keep going underneath it is it's a very simple next phase of drilling, but instead of focusing on this, we still want to test the whole 7 kilometers we have access to before we come back here and start to add up the tonnage and start to shape the deposit for the sake of a big discovery on any part of the system would give us the energy and the fuel for our share price, to get currency in our share price, to raise more capital, and to add more drills and be much more aggressive with our drilling to shorten our timeline to revealing the world-class opportunity. This is what the core looked like that ran 0.5%. I want you to keep this image in your head because in a minute I'm going to show you a cliff that has a lot of this rock, a big skarn body about 7 kilometers away. This has a lot of magnetite and iron. As I said earlier, that's what's carrying a lot of the grade throughout. There's about 75 meters of this, which is really, really a huge abundance of iron that's occurring, which is excellent for the potential of that skarn mineralization supporting our model, that it's there. And then when you look deeper in the hole into the sulfides, you're seeing at least 4 different events which pulse copper and gold into the system. So it's a very strong system. There's incredible grades pumping through here. We see up to 18% copper. We see up to 200 grams gold. It's a very rich system. It's very big. And a big, rich system is really good for the potential outcome, but it can take a little bit of patience before you find the sweet spots of the system, and that's just how skarns work. This is a cross-section of Las Bambas. I'm not going to have you read these numbers because it's very small on this slide here, but I'll explain what you're looking at. They took a slice through one of the clusters at Las Bambas, and they're seeing anywhere from 8 to 120 meters of thickness. And in this slide here, averaging about 1% copper, but a lot of it is in the 0.3 up to 1.5%. And if you look at this slide, in the blue areas, the bluish color, that's a lot of stuff in the 0.2 range. But if you look at the red colors, that's where the grade starts to go up. So these are drill intensive. Our drill results to date, our 4th hole fits on this in the upper middle, or the upper part of the category, upper middle part of the category of grade, and we just have to keep drilling down at depth. But we are hitting highlights that would make the Las Bambas slide. I talked about the reddish rock, the iron rock. This is 7 kilometers north. This is Mother Nature's cheat sheet. It's a 400-meter cliff. There's mining adits that were mining really high-grade copper halfway 200 meters down the cliff. If this cliff wasn't here and we all walked on surface, we would not know this beautiful skarn body was there. This could potentially be, we wouldn't mind the side of a cliff, but this is what we think we're targeting in the 9 kilometers of strike length that we have in target so far. It's going to pinch and swell throughout because skarns are erratic on their shape, but you can see the grade on the surface that occurs and peripheral to it. On the left-hand side of the page, we describe mineralized intrusions. That's where the intrusion occurs. The marble is the limestone. In the middle is the crust. This is our model. This is what we believe we're drilling in hole 4, and we're starting to see on the other side of the big intrusion that we're drilling right now. Large discoveries require a lot of power, a lot of water, a lot of infrastructure. And if you go down to Argentina, Chile, and Peru, some of these projects are way into the mountains and they don't have any of it. This project's blessed with a road that you can drive right to the property, and you can drive with a 4x4 right to your drill rig over a moderate terrain. Incredible road access. We are drilling underneath mine power. That's a first for me in my career. Those are high tensile power lines that the government has put here since we've been here. So in the case of a mining scenario, power is already on the project. The towns are nearby. They do not look at this project. They are down the hill on the other side. They provide a workforce. We are employing a lot of them with jobs. So it's a perfect scenario to be close by towns, but none of them are impeding any of our targets. And lastly, because of the moderate terrain, we're at 3,900 meters, which is not too high. There's mines at 5,500 meters. We have no rainy season that prevents us. The drilling will continue till December 22nd, and it will resume on January 3rd. That's 11 days off in the year for Christmas to take off from drilling. And drilling is going to be what gives us our ultimate success. And lastly, the lifeline of all mines is water. We have multiple water sources nearby, about 4 of them. We have water for drilling, and we believe there's plenty of water for mining as well in a mining environment. This just made the goal of drilling 0.5% copper or better way more valuable than a lot of projects globally. The mineralization is outcropping on surface, or it's underneath a thin layer, 5 to 40 meters thick of volcanic, so it's all open pit, what I'm talking about, and your grades are really, 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 really good, and you have incredible infrastructure. These check marks will help us monetize this to a much bigger magnitude than something more rural and remotely, because our CapEx would be intentionally a lot lower because of that kind of infrastructure. Now this slide, I used to put it at the front. It's incredibly important. It's about how we got in here. How did we unlock it? We've lived in the communities for 9 years. We did these agricultural programs by bringing in an agricultural engineer and an animal health specialist. What we do is we go to the government and we apply for grants. We have a small capital investment, but we write the entire grant and we manage the grant once we get it. The government participates, and then the community also invests, which makes it sustainable. We've brought cows because there's a red meat deficiency in the Andes. There's an actual iron deficiency in the people there. We brought sheep. We brought in fish farms. We brought an agricultural ecosystem for the community, not only to benefit themselves nutritionally, but others. In total, we've done about over $400,000 so far, and we've got $4 million US worth of grants that are slowly being approved for additional programs in additional communities throughout our property, so we're expanding that. We are the first junior mining company in South America to do the Agrodias, the agricultural programs grants with the government, and now a lot of the majors and other juniors are starting to follow suit. But it was our best way to leave a very positive impact, a sustainable footprint, and if we leave tomorrow and the chance the discovery wasn't there, they will benefit for multiple decades after we're gone, because now they have a farming ecosystem. This is a snapshot of our land position. In the blue hedge marks that you see in the box by Cascabamba, that is the permitted area to drill right now. We are expanding that as I speak to you today. We are going to expand that polygon to over double that size, and we are working on access into the Lucanamarca community in yellow, and then we'll follow up the San Jose de Huacara community. The big access we have is a 3-year access agreement with the Huancasancos community. Macha Machai at the bottom where the star is one of our most prospective areas that we have not been to yet as well. And we're finding things in the Cascabamba area outside of our polygon, outcropping mineralization that's extremely enticing as well. This has a very, very rich pipeline for multiple discoveries to be made over time. Not only is that encouraging to us, but when you look at the premium and the valuation that we're going to be able to achieve, it's always measured on future potential growth. When I sold Caden to Agnico Eagle, they saw that they could get their money back on base what was found so far, but the way they measured the value of that transaction was future upside potential. And that's how it works for majors. If somebody pays $4 billion for a big discovery here and they just get their money back, it's not going to be worthwhile. But if there's potential that they could make billions of dollars on multiple discoveries, it's going to render a much, much higher, more competitive price on a takeover. This is a snapshot of our land position. This is a result of a copper and a gold sampling survey that was done in the streams. seeing what's draining off of everything. You can see Macha Machai on the left. It's the most pinkest block there. That's the richest copper drainage in the entire 100,000 hectares we have. You can see who some of our neighbors are. You've got Rio Tinto, you've got Buenaventura, you've got Fresnillo, you've got Freeport. Everybody's in this area. Bebek, everyone's in this area. We had a much larger land position that we're slowly going through, and we're picking the best parts and dropping the least prospective areas. But this is massive, and the potential for discovery goes well beyond what we're drilling here, and it gives us a chance to be competitive as repeating some of the district that you saw on the right-hand side of all those major mines next door. So really good social footprint. The risks with a project like this is community. We've mitigated that with 9 years of work with them and living in the communities. It's very target rich, and there's copper and gold everywhere on this. If you come for a site visit, you will walk on copper extensively for very large areas. The scale is really hard to comprehend until you listen to it from all the major mining companies who've been here, and that's what gives us the motivation to keep going. And lastly, we are in the early stages of drilling what we think is the start of a world-class discovery. We have 177 million shares out. This is our breakdown of share structure. Between Oren, the parent company that it was spun out of, it came out with about 110 million shares, and the financings we've done to get through and get to the point of drilling, I've invested $6 million personally. I am a shareholder first and a CEO second. What that means is the share price has to make, that's what works first. That's my priority. And the second is running the business to make sure that occurs. So I think of things from the sense of how can we monetize this the most for shareholders with everything we do from a business perspective. Newmont and Teck have their ownership, 6.2% and 9.9%. There's 3 substantial billionaires, one out of the US, one out of Europe, and Ross Beatty is a major shareholder out of Vancouver. That does not guarantee discovery success, but the profile of investors that we've been able to attract in our registry would really, really accelerate our success if we were to get it right. Our shareholders are our biggest strength because you determine the way our company performs. Copper is an amazing commodity that's going into supply deficits, and we are very strategic. We were able to do our financing at the peak of copper this year at 50 cents when copper was $5 a pound. There's a lot of luck behind that and timing that worked in our favor, but we executed quickly once we saw that. When we raised that $19 million, had we been a listed free trading company, we probably could have raised closer to $35 or $40 million. We've raised, in my view, the perfect amount to weather what you've seen happen to copper since then, the 20% drop. We do not need to raise money until 2026, Q1 2026. That is one of the biggest assets at the end of this bear market that a junior can have in a project that's going to require a lot of drilling. We have the capital, we have 30 holes paid for, and 16 months of working capital. And then lastly, you have a discount on our share price because copper is down 20% from where it was. This is our share price for the year. You're going to see volatility through discovery because we're going to get sniffs, we're going to get hints. There's going to be a lot of anticipation until it catches the wind of the copper market and the discovery starts happening often from the drill holes. We now have hole 9 is just completing as I'm standing here, so we have 4 drill holes pending. We hope to have those out before the end of the year or early into January. And we've applied to expand our drill permit from 49 holes that we can drill to 200 holes. That's a big effort for a good reason because we like what we're seeing and we want to be able to scale this project up and drill a lot more in a compressed time period once we really get into the discovery. I would not do it at today's $4 copper price. I would not race and spend my treasury quickly, but I want to be able to do that next year when I believe the copper price is going to start really performing and the discovery will be coming out of the drill results. Second thing we've done is we're also adding the ability to a permit to add up to 4 or 5 drill rigs on the property. Again, time is the one thing that affects every investment. And if we start to get onto it, our confidence is building, we're vectoring into a good discovery. We're going to want to be able to add drills and drill as many holes as we can so we can show a lot more confidence and conviction that we have the Las Bambas, and we want to time that into a rising copper market as well. So in summary, why Coppernico today? Your timing in copper, this is a once-in-a-career asset or opportunity. It's followed by every base metal major in the world, from the largest companies right down to the mid-sized companies. The early indications are extremely, extremely positive, and we have a very good financing, or a very good treasury. We're very disciplined with our spending, and I have not formally marketed this company yet. I've done light marketing. I've watched the US election. I'm very careful when I spend money to go market the company, but I plan to be ambitiously on the road starting late January, going in through the first quarter, because seasonality for copper works at the same time, and we're going to have the first 12 to 15 holes back to talk about to raise the profile and start to build currency in our share price. The outlook on copper, even though it's in a temporary lull, I believe that changes once Trump is inaugurated. I think everyone's waiting to see economic policy and how that's going to play out. But the outlook is obvious from the modernization, from the electrification, and the amount of refurbishment has to be done. Several US cities, China's expanding, India's coming online. Copper is going to be a perpetual performer for the rest of my career. Ladies and gentlemen, that's the end of my presentation. I'll open up for any questions that anybody has. Yes? No NSRs. We have 100% of the 100,000 hectares except for 2 claims that affect the area called Furaso, where the previous drill holes are. We have an 80-20 relationship, or a joint venture, not joint venture, but option earning with Aceros Arequipa, the steel company. We've been dealing with them for 9 years. We have an incredible relationship with them. If they do not participate on the 20% of funding this project, if they're focusing on their steel business, they will dilute down. They'll end up with a small NSR on that area, but it's 2 small areas of the very large footprint. But yes, most of it is 100%. Any other questions? All right, well, thank you all for listening. Thank you very much for coming. This is an exciting time with drills turning. Any drill hole that we drill could be the next one that raises that profile. It's the most exciting part of a big exploration project when the drill's turning. And as of right now, it's going to keep turning for at least the next 6 to 8 months and possibly continuing from there. Thank you very much for coming today. Appreciate it.